Hello, Tri-State, and welcome to Easter week and our series of messages we're calling Easter, a Countercultural Event. We hope you'll be greatly blessed this week as we reflect on the events of Holy Week and all that Christ has done for us. Today's devotional is called Hearing, but Not Understanding. We're going to look at the response to the first Easter. What were the people expecting? And why didn't they clue in to what was happening? So the first thing to recognize is that on multiple occasions, the New Testament writers record Jesus predicting his death and resurrection. For instance, in Luke 18, verse 31, we see this. And taking the 12, he said to them, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and everything that is written about the Son of Man by the prophets will be accomplished. For he will be delivered over to the Gentiles and will be mocked and shamefully treated and spit upon. And after flogging him, they will kill him, and on the third day he will rise." This sounds pretty straightforward, but let's go to chapter 24, where Luke records the experiences of various individuals as they encounter the reality of a resurrected Christ. The chapter starts with several women going to the tomb. And in verse 1, it says this. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they went to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared. When you consider the context of the previous verses, it's clear these women were fully expecting a lifeless body. There's no indication of even a slight hope that the grave would be empty, or that they would be addressed by angels who say to them in verse 5, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified and on the third day rise." And they remembered his words. Next, we see Peter initially reacting with skepticism to this news, but once he saw the empty tomb, it says he went home marveling at what had happened. So Peter saw and believed, yet there's no indication he grasped the full significance of it. Similarly, in verse 36, Jesus appears in the house among the 11 disciples. They're overcome with joy, but also fear and doubt. Maybe it just seemed too good to be true. Maybe it was their most shocking revelation yet about who this man really was. Maybe it was like trying to explain in 2019 that it would be soon difficult to find toilet paper at your local grocery store. We don't know for sure, as Luke does not provide us further detail. Lastly, there are the two men walking on the road to Emmaus when they're joined by the risen Jesus. Let's pick up the conversation in verse 21 as they explain their discouragement. "But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things happened. Moreover, some women of our company amazed us. They were at the tomb early in the morning, and when they did not find his body, they came back saying that they had even seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see. And he said to them, 'O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe, and all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory?' And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself." Now, we don't have the full transcript of this conversation, but it's clear from the text that Jesus gave them a thorough teaching from the Old Testament. Now, if you've ever been part of a really good Bible study, you know what a blessing that can be. However, I'm confident that these two guys got the most awesome Bible study ever taught. Imagine how Jesus helped them connect the dots from numerous Old Testament passages so their eyes could be open and they might recognize Christ as the one who fulfills all the prophecies and the one the scriptures point to over and over again. Luke 24 paints a picture of bewilderment among those who encounter the risen Jesus. They are slow to see the reality of the resurrection, much less grasp its full weight and significance, which is a whole sermon all to itself, and I encourage you to do some further study on that. Well, you might be thinking their slowness in belief is reasonable. After all, we're dealing with a supernatural event, and this is certainly a fair point. But I think it goes much deeper than that. The disciples and their contemporaries had developed presuppositions about the Messiah and all the prophecies provided in the Old Testament. They did not see how Jesus' predictions fit with the prophecies. Furthermore, while most first-century Jews believed in a resurrection, they only understood it as an end-of-age occurrence, not something where one could or would come back to life a few days after death. The possibility of a literal bodily resurrection in 3 days was simply not an option on the multiple-choice question regarding what happens after the Messiah's death on the cross. In fact, dying such a humiliating death by Roman crucifixion was definitely not supposed to happen either. Ultimately, it seems they were relegated to thinking in mere human terms. They could not think outside the box, as we might say. Now, if we return to Luke 18, where Jesus predicts his death and resurrection, verse 34 concludes that passage with the following statement. But they understood none of these things. This saying was hidden from them, and they did not grasp what was said. We can learn from this that these things which appear most mysterious to us today may yet appear perfectly clear at some future point in time. If God has willed it or spoken it, we should lean in and learn to trust him and believe. So, let's wrap up. The resurrection as a miraculous event was hard to accept as real for those who experienced it in person, and death by crucifixion followed quickly by a bodily resurrection was not a popular narrative that would have sold easily. Given this, it seems curious that a religious movement with such unbelievable and countercultural claims would grow to a worldwide following. But maybe it's because its claims happen to be true. Today, many reject the claims of Christianity, no matter how much evidence is unearthed. Facts aren't necessarily the issue. Rather, the implications of the facts, if true, are the stumbling block for many. As Jesus said to Thomas, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." 20 centuries later, the question remains, do you believe? Well, thanks for joining me today, and I do hope you'll tune in for our next segment on Wednesday evening. It will premiere right here on the TSF YouTube channel at 7 p.m.